start with a very, very current event, yesterday's budget, which was Chancellor Philip Hammond's first and last here in the UK for spring, because he wants to do them in autumn now.
Just because.
He's like, no, I don't like a spring budget. We're going to do autumn ones. you got to stamp your mark, don't you?
Exactly.
So there was a lot of talk. Well, there has been a lot of talk since the budget's come out, especially around things like taxes, national insurance contributions, but we're not talking about that because we're not a finance podcast.
No.
We're talking about technology, and very specifically, the £200 million he promised yesterday for full fibre broadband.
That sounds like a lot of cash.
It sounds like a lot of cash, and it's on top of it's on top of £400 million he promised in his autumn statement last year, bringing the total he's promised for full fibre to £600 million.
Okay.
And then you can double that again, because for every pound the government is investing, they're requiring that private enterprise invest another pound.
So what? That's £1.2 billion towards fibre broadband.
But, basically, if all of that investment is taken up by private companies. So basically they're saying to private fibre companies, if you want to invest in private fibre broadband networks, we will contribute half of that.
Okay.
So it sounds like a pretty good deal. But there's two questions I have following this. The first one, £600 million, or 1.2 billion if we want to look at the full amount.
The full figure?
Yeah. Is it enough?
Well, I mean, it does sound like a lot. It sounds like it would be enough to get fibre going.
It does. But the answer is no.
Oh.
I've done some calculations on this piece of paper.
All right, hit me with your math.
So looking at it, now, again, these are very rough calculations, but the fact that I did two calculations based on two publicly available figures and came to the same conclusion, as you'll find out very shortly, means that I think these are pretty accurate. So, full fibre broadband, which a very basic background is having a glass fibre cable all the way to your house, which 99% of British homes don't have at the moment.
Yep.
Now, in York, TalkTalk and City Fibre have teamed up in the last few years to build out a full fibre trial. So they're basically trialling this new technology in York. About 40,000 homes, I think, they're hoping to pass. Mm-hmm. And they've said that it costs about £500 per household that they run past with this new fibre network. So that's the cost of the network, about £500 per household. The UK has roughly, at last count, 26 million households.
Just a few to get by then.
Yep. So if you were to reach 80% of those, which is about the number of homes that are in urban areas, plus or minus a couple of percent, that would cost you £10.4 billion.
Okay, so that's a
About
little
10
bit short.
times, yeah.
A little bit short of the cash you need.
Yeah. So I thought, okay, well, that's just one calculation. Let's look at something else. Let's look home, New Zealand.
Okay. Good
Paradise.
Aotearoa.
Now, back home in New Zealand at the moment, they are actually rolling out full fibre to almost every urban household, with the intention of replacing the copper lines, the old copper phone lines.
Yep.
And that is a project that is costing 1.75 billion New Zealand dollars, or about £1 billion. That sounds quite cheap, but you've got to remember that New Zealand has 4.7 million people.
We have fewer people, but certainly New Zealand is more sparse.
It is more sparse. But ignoring the density or anything like that, so it's costing £1 billion, and if we break it down by population, that's about 460 New Zealand dollars, or £200 per person they're connecting, not per household. So if we were to take that £200 per person figure and connect 80% of the UK's 65 million people, it would cost...
calculate out for this one.
£10.4 billion, which is exactly the same figure I came up with when calculating based on TalkTalk. So I like to think this is a relatively accurate...
It sounds like pretty solid math, and it sounds like you've got the math right, and they might not have it right this time around.
Well, that's the thing. So basically, we're looking at about £10 billion to connect 80% of the UK to full fibre. And the Chancellor is throwing essentially pennies at the problem. Which brings me to my next question. Mm-hmm. Is it necessary?
Yes.
Do we really need to do it? The current situation we have in the UK, and we did talk about this on the previous broadband special, is there are two national networks that offer you so-called fibre, and that's the BT Openreach network and Virgin Media. Mm-hmm. Both of them do run fibre nationally, but only as far as that green cabinet in your street. Mm-hmm. And from there, it relies on a copper wire to your house. Yeah. Two different copper wire technologies based on the two networks, but still, it's an old technology.
Still gives you a
copper
decent
wire.
speed, but might not. But it's still, you're right. It's old technology. It may not be as fast as what might be around the corner in 10 years' time.
Well, that's it. And also, in many cases, it's very old wire that's very expensive to maintain. And being, because of course fibre optic uses light signals, copper uses electrical signals, and the UK is quite a wet country. Buried cables, when they get wet, if they're copper, they don't work.
Yep.
If they're fibre, light can pass through water.
Yeah.
No worries. So basically, fibre being glass, it's capable of virtually unlimited upgrades, because it can carry the speed of light. So at the moment, most technology with fibre broadband will allow you around a gigabit of speed maximum. But as time goes on, we can upgrade the technology at each end of the fibre line and keep getting higher and higher and higher speeds. So it's future-proofed. And it's not just for fun stuff like video streaming.
Oh, what else is it for?
This has got to be said. Well, we're looking at Brexit. We're facing Brexit with a very concerned face sometimes.
Breakfast means Brexit.
We know what you mean. So we're looking at Brexit. Post-Brexit, Britain needs to be very competitive.
Yep.
Now, in most other developed countries that Britain is wanting to compete with, they are rolling out super-fast fibre broadband. And by super-fast, I mean fibre to the home.
Yep.
In one way or another. In Britain, we're not. Businesses need to be able to compete. They need to be able to connect to their markets. They need to be able to transfer data across the country, across borders very quickly. And if they're relying on an old phone line, that's not going to happen.
No.
So basically, what I'm saying here is that if Britain needs to compete, it needs to do it once and do it right. Roll out the fibre, and it needs to do it now. Well, it only costs £10.4 billion, because who knows how much it's going to cost in 2 years' time when the pound is worth bugger all, thanks to Article 50.
We'll see how it goes.
So we need a lot more funding, Mr. Hammond.
Yeah.
Then your £600 million is just not going to cut it.
Well, we've got another budget coming up. What is it? This spring or next spring that he's doing his next one?
This autumn will be his first major budget.
So there could be more investment.
Yeah, maybe another £200 million.
We might get to the magic figure of 10 billion in a couple of years' time. We'll see how it goes, shall we?
Slowly.
Technology questions, comments? You can contact the show on Facebook, In Tech Today Podcast, on Twitter, In Tech Today Pod, or at the website, intech.today.